Happy Friday, folks, and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson, at JRob from MN, if you follow me on Twitter. And I'm here with my partner in crime,
Todd Peterson. Good to have you with us, folks. The flood episode. No, we're not talking about biblical retribution for the choices that people are making right now, focusing just on Dubai and the flood of immigration that we're seeing. We're going to talk about all this today and more.
Yeah, I got to say, with world events going on right now, Todd, it probably wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to talk about the biblical flood. Because
wouldn't be the worst thing to happen either, maybe.
I don't know about anybody in the audience, but I wake up and it's like, we're living Sodom and Gomorrah right now. Who knew?
This is exactly how they must have felt.
Yeah. So just to frame up a little bit about what we're going to go over today, many folks out there haven't heard about this crazy flooding in Dubai. And Dubai is a very wealthy country in the Middle East or city in the Middle East. And they have been doing some weather manipulation in the desert. And the results of which, I think for me, and Todd, maybe you feel the same, but I see humans mess around with stuff. And I'm like, this seems like a really bad idea.
We think we're smart, but when it comes to Mother Nature, we will lose every single time.
Yeah. I just don't know how folks can always assume that human beings know best and scientists are always right and that kind of thing. And but hey, before we get into it, folks, for those who are tuning in, do us a big favor. When you start talking about climate and you start talking about illegal immigrants, your social media platforms that you're watching on, and we're on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and Rumble, they're going to tend to suppress this message. So we're going to ask you, like we do every week, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share of this content, because the algorithms aren't going to necessarily favor us in pushing this in your Facebook feed. It's funny, every time we take on a topic like this, we'll see in the comments like, oh, I didn't get the notification, I didn't get this or that. And it's so yeah. What do you think?
Talk about abortion today too. That really could have tanked our numbers. Just throw it all in there at once.
Yeah.
But and Jason, can I make one more plug? Folks, we are Freedom from the Press. We try to escape from the corporate media matrix. We especially encourage you to share this content with any family member, neighbor, friend that might have voted for Joe Biden in 2020, is probably going to vote Democrat again in 2024. We're trying to expose them to an alternative messaging, truth, reality that they're just not getting when they watch MSNBC every day. You can fact check us. We often put our sources in the comments section. We'll tell you where we source it when we pop it up on the screen. But it's just a little bit different flavor than what you're going to get on your corporate media channels. And we really appreciate if you'd share it with them, because we're trying to change minds here. We're trying to get everyone out of that matrix that corporate media creates.
Yeah, and I got to say, that's kind of the overlay of this Dubai flooding. And here's what's remarkable. We live in a time, and here'll be our disclaimer for all the fact checkers and the social media platforms. We are taking no position on climate change. We are not making any statements regarding climate change, what's happening, what's not happening. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments about what, hey, Susan, thanks for tuning in today, for what you think about climate change. But here's kind of the overall message we want to say. One, people don't know what's happening in Dubai because it's got zero coverage from the mainstream media. Two, the fact that people aren't able to discuss climate change causes, climate change solutions, what we should or shouldn't be doing, is very harmful to think. One, it's anti-First Amendment. Two, it's very harmful because we should be able to have these sorts of conversations. And we're going to give you guys some historical context too about this climate stuff. So yeah, and Christine just popped in. Just tell us the truth. Christine, here's the thing that Todd and I do. We both left jobs in the real world so we could create content. And our job is, how do we just tell you what's going on? And we're both Trump guys. We don't like Fox News any more than we like CNN because both of them lie to you. Your mainstream media outlets just don't show you stuff and just don't give you the real information. And we're able, we actually go back to the source. So if we're talking about a Supreme Court decision, we went and read the decision. if we're going to talk about immigration legislation, we're just reading right from the immigration legislation. We're not taking what some other pundit's been told to tell us. So
yeah, that read the source, that filtered their own bias and opinion in there, and is distorting it completely by the time it gets to your ears here. So we will always give you the sources so you can just check it out for yourself. And that's at the end of the day, that's what we encourage. We want all folks, wherever you get your news from, to go find an alternative source to make sure that that lines up with what you think is to be true and what ultimately is true.
Absolutely. Well, Todd, should we fire off with some of these videos of Dubai?
We've got some great videos in no particular order, folks. This is what's going on halfway around the world, allegedly due to cloud seeding. I think we have to couch our language today here.
Yeah. And actually, this started about 4 days ago. So if you look, this is cloud seeding. This is Dubai's airport. Keep in mind, this is in the middle of the desert. This is downtown Dubai, commercial area. You see that's like a mall. Todd, I don't know a lot about deserts, but you ever seen that in a desert before?
Actually, I was just going to say, Jason, I used to live in Phoenix area. They had what's called haboobs, and I wonder if we have any Southwest viewers, but that's when basically a giant dust storm / thunderstorm rolls in. So that's kind of what it reminds me of. And I was just going to make the point, too. The reason this is so bad, they said they got about 6 inches of rain. Jason, I think we got 6 inches of rain in Minnesota this last week. You wouldn't even know it. It just filters off. But in the desert, the ground is so hard and dry, the water doesn't seep into the ground. So it only takes a couple inches to just stay up on top of the surface and then create this havoc that you're seeing here.
The other thing, too, is they don't have any infrastructure really built to handle that volume of water.
Because they built a city in the desert.
Right, yeah. They're like, hey, we're in the desert. Why would we need a water system that's going to handle 6 inches of rain? That's crazy.
All right, we got more videos, folks. Let's take a look at what else is going on in Dubai. I think this is the one that went viral here, so we got to show this.
Oh, I love this.
I'm going to translate. He said, look, there's a cat in the car.
Your Arabic command of the Arabic language is phenomenal.
Don't fact check that, Facebook. I don't know what he said.
Look at how deep that water is.
Because what is that? Is that at least 2 feet? So it's also crazy. They said they got like 6 inches of rain, and yet that still looks like 2 feet. So you just talk about where all this water has to pool.
Right. Look at all those cars.
You know, Jason, we often joke with our family members. They said, wait a minute, you quit your corporate job, you quit your other cushy position, and you do what now for a living? And we often joke that we wrote cat articles on the AmericanTribune.com. So I think this video ties in nicely to how we make our money nowadays.
Yeah, Todd, we love the cat stories.
We might have to spin that one up and get an article.
Right.
All right, folks, we are just getting started here.
This is from today, so this is like 5 days in.
Yeah, that was
in wrath.
What's kind of impressive, look at those cars too, by the way. So Dubai is a very wealthy city. You can tell that in just some of the vehicles you see on the road, but kind of impressive that they had those rafts set up specifically, I guess, to save vehicles.
Right. Yeah. So they can still get around.
All right, we got to go to Martha's comment here, Jason. It's nice not to fool with Mother Nature. Yeah, this is, again, we have to be careful with what we say on Big Tech here, but it seems pretty common sense to just let Mother Nature run its course. And as humans, we adapt to Mother Nature. I think there's that fine line Jason talked about. At one point, when you start manipulating Mother Nature, we have no idea what's going to happen. We can theorize, we can experiment, but at the end of the day, stuff like this is going to continue to happen as we get more and more aggressive with the alleged cloud seeding that caused this downfall. All right, Jason, I think we got more videos here.
Let's keep going. This is awesome.
All right, we got the cat one. We did that one. Oh, do we have 2 cat ones?
Oh, yeah, the other one's just the short version of the cat.
Yeah, there it is.
That poor cat. That cat's living in the desert going.
He didn't ask for the deluge. He thought he was living in the warm desert.
Right. What's going on? All right. So I just to ask everybody, have you seen anywhere, unless you're on like Twitter or something, all these crazy videos of Dubai, one of the most advanced cities in the world, one of the richest cities in the world? You can see on the cars. It's a desert. They got 6 inches of rain. The entire city's flooded. They're rafting SUVs out. One would think this would be the lead story on the news, Todd. One would think that people would be, holy cow, this is crazy. You know, this should be a warning to humans when you start taking action that you don't know. So, but we've got some screen grabs of some articles that actually are from cited sources that will explain what they feel happened and how these came to be.
Absolutely. And I will just say up front here, it gets a little faded because there is a paywall behind Bloomberg. And I'm sorry, folks, I want to give you the news. I am not going to give my money to Bloomberg simply for one screenshot here. So you can kind of see as it fades off here as they pop that up. But I'm just going to read this. This is from Bloomberg directly. Torrential rains across the United Arab Emirates prompted flight cancellations. We saw videos of those. Forced schools to shut down and brought traffic to a standstill. Yeah, that is an understatement. Brought traffic to a floating river. And here's where it gets interesting. The floods came after one of the worst storms in decades. The government had seeded clouds. Again, I'm reading directly from Bloomberg. The government had seeded clouds in the preceding days, though meteorologists said it was unlikely that had a significant impact on the rainfall. Folks, you come to your own conclusions. If they said they cloud seeded, and then you decide how much of an impact that had on Dubai. The UAE has been carrying out seeding operations since 2002. Folks, 2 decades of cloud seeding. And then it gets a little
so here will be what I'm going to say. And then are we going to go to the historical videos then, Todd?
We do. I have one more article if we want to read that.
Oh, let's do that.
It's from CBS here really fast. And then
CBS, another cited news source.
And we'll go
Your
back.
lefty friends will say like, hey, yeah, CBS is a good source.
All right. This is part of it. I will say, if you go to the entire article, they say that cloud seeding is not as bad as the greenhouse effect. And I think Jason and I are going to get to, what greenhouse effect could have had if we'd done this a couple decades earlier. But cloud seeding is a technique used to improve precipitation. According to the Desert Research Institute, that seems appropriate, trying to get the desert wet. Scientists do this by putting tiny particles called nuclei into the atmosphere that attach to clouds. These nuclei provide a base for snowflakes to form. After cloud seeding takes place, the newly formed snowflakes quickly grow and fall from the clouds back to the surface of the earth, increasing snowpack and stream flow. In the Middle East, instead of precipitation in the form of snow, its cloud seeding program generates increased rain. Scientists typically go about cloud seeding in 2 ways, using either generators on the ground or distributing the nuclei via aircraft.
So wait a second, Todd. You're telling me that airplanes fly up in the sky and spray cloud seeding stuff in the sky? I was told chemtrails aren't real.
Well, Jason, I think it's important to say that chemtrails are a figment of your imagination. Cloud seeding is a different operation altogether. Now, whenever you see those airplanes up in the sky, it's simply condensation from the jet engines of passenger aircraft.
Don't believe your lying eyes is what you're telling me, right, Todd?
It is an interesting question. We see it up in the sky. As a kid, I admit, I don't recollect looking at the sky and either seeing it or not seeing it. I lived under an airport. I will just say that doesn't come across my memory all that much. I seem to see more as an adult. But I don't know, Jason.
Right.
I'm just going to leave it there. I don't know.
So you've got this Dubai. You've got it documented that they've been cloud seeding since 2002, and they're attempting to manipulate Mother Nature. And the reason they're doing that is because they live in a desert. Now, what's happened is you have catastrophic results. Think of that, 6 inches of rain, multiple feet of water. Think of the hundreds of millions of dollars of damage. It sounds like there hasn't been much loss of life yet, but this is really, really bad, Todd. And I gotta say, the folks in Dubai are, as Randy says, wow, they admitted to cloud seizing and it caused this flooding.
I'm gonna let you finish your thought, then I want to get
my point is, so you couldn't even talk about cloud seeding, and because you'd be labeled a chemtrail enthusiast, a conspiracy theorist. I might have to get out my tinfoil hat for this one. And now you see it's covered. And why is there a media blackout? Because this starts destroying some of the narratives that get out there. And we can't have a grown-up adult conversation about humans' attempt to manipulate the climate and the environment. I mean, they're talking about now they want to shoot dust up in to limit sun in the atmosphere. It's crazy. Todd, what were you going to say to Randy?
I think the most startling thing about this entire story is not that Dubai flooded, but that, like Randy said, they are admitting to cloud seeding. Had we done this podcast a week ago and we said, I think they cloud seed. I think governments are flying airplanes and they're releasing particles into the air and it's manipulating the weather, I think this episode would have been shut down. But now that we are citing CBS, Bloomberg, and folks, if you Google cloud seeding Dubai, you will see every major media outlet has written an article, and they hedge a little bit. They say, yeah, it could have been cloud seeding, but we think it was more likely, X, Y, or Z. But we're still having the conversation that, yes, cloud seeding is a real thing. And they'll side skirt the issue of whether it was the reason for the floods in Dubai, but they will not deny that it's happening now. And this should be the lead. Every conspiracy theorist has been tarred, feathered, ridiculed, and now we are getting an admission. Again, this is, 6 months? It goes from conspiracy theory to fact on pretty much everything.
Right.
This would be the lead story. They admitted to cloud seeding. They admit that it happens. They admit that we manipulate the weather. And then it makes you wonder, if they're admitting to this, it's always like they just give you a little window to look into. Then you have to ask yourself, what else are they doing?
Right. And Todd, you made an excellent point. If we would have done this episode a week ago, and like we want to talk about weather manipulation, how bad it is, all those sorts of things, they would have labeled us conspiracy theorists, crazy. Facebook or YouTube would have nuked these channels. Thank God we're on Rumble too. Rumble would have let it go out, but you would have been called a nut job. And now, like, here's the video proof. Here's the mainstream media admitting it happens. And we weren't even able to have this conversation 7 days ago because you went contrary to the mainstream media. And here's the danger in doing that. Todd, should we start with the first video?
Should we go to Spock?
Let's go Spock. This is a video from 1972, folks.
78.
Or 78, sorry. I was 4 years old. Todd's parents were maybe dating. And let's watch this video that, it's Leonard Nimoy in it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
It's spectacular.
Uh-oh, is he muted?
Oh, you got unmuted on your end.
This is what happens in a live show, folks. Bear with us. Maybe the viewers can hear it. I can't do much about the sound here for a second.
No, can you hit the unmute button?
No,
it's right underneath the video square.
Folks, I'm going to go to another video that we have queued up here, and then let me try to salvage this other one because this one's too good not to watch. All right, let's fast forward to a couple years
Concern about rising temperatures on planet Earth heated up a hearing here in Washington today. For years, scientists have theorized about the dangers of the so-called greenhouse effect, the warming of the Earth's atmosphere due to the burning of coal and oil. And in recent months, as David Culhane reports, research has uncovered facts to support that theory.
Many scientists claim that the temperature of the Earth's atmosphere has been rising over the past 100 years, that the great sheets of pack ice in Antarctica are melting at a much more rapid rate than previously. And finally, that the sea level has been rising with increasing swiftness over the past 40 years. If these scientists are correct, about 25% of Florida would be flooded, along with low-lying areas all over the world. Climate changes could produce widespread disruption of agriculture. The American farm belt might be too dry, and the wheat and corn crops would have to move to Canada. Scientists blame the odorless, colorless carbon dioxide gas for these potentially dangerous changes around the planet. It is the greenhouse effect. The gas allows sunlight to filter down and warm the Earth. But like the glass of a greenhouse, the carbon dioxide tends to trap heat so that it cannot rise into space. The scientists maintain that the coal, oil, and gas we've been burning for 100 years have produced more and more carbon dioxide and helped overheat the Earth. Now, some political leaders endorse the demands for more CO2 monitoring stations, like this one in Hawaii. And they share the anger of the scientists at Reagan administration budget cuts at a time when they feel closer to getting definitive answers.
We are not doing the kind of research that we should be doing to determine whether or not these scientists who are so alarmed are correct in their assessment.
And what they find out will affect the lives and fortunes of millions of people, the very survival of cities like this one. David Culhane, CBS News, New York.
Oh, I think we got the other video queued up here, but folks, remember, this was 1982. Imprint that in your brain for a second, because we're going to go back in time in just a little bit to 1978, which, if my math is correct, is just a mere 4 years. 4 years, and you're going to see the narrative change dramatically. But I couldn't help but notice Al Gore, all the way back in 1982, pushing the same stuff that he continues to do to this day. And remember, he predicted there would be no more polar bears by now. Last I checked, those populations are thriving in the Arctic.
And I got to say, folks, think about what you were doing in 1982. I was like 8 years old, and these guys have videos on CBS. This was on the 6 o'clock news. It shows Florida being halfway underwater. It showed all this stuff. You compare that now. We've shared 100 videos about these climate extremists locking themselves places, shutting down doors. AOC, like 7 years ago, told us we got 13 years left before we do irreparable harm to the environment. And I'm just introducing the concept that possibly the science they're basing this on might be flawed.
Maybe. One way to check, Jason, if we could get a camera set up at this exact same place where this reporter is right here, I would guess the water levels are fairly similar, even though this report told us pretty steadfastly that water levels were going to rise because the greenhouse effect was going to melt ice, and that ice would then go into the ocean and bring your water levels up. I'm not sure. I don't live in New York, but if we have any New York viewers, can you let us know where the water levels are here?
Yeah, I'm thinking New York is not Dubai today. I don't think it's underwater.
No,
and I think Florida's still there. I mean, I haven't been there lately, but
yeah, I go to Florida annually. It's still there as far as I can tell. I go to the same beach I did as a kid, so
there you go. So we pull up the video from 4 years earlier.
All right, folks,
let's see if we got the audio fixed.
4 years earlier.
The data shows that average temperatures in the Arctic have fallen dramatically over the last 30 years. In most locations, the drop has been about 2 degrees centigrade. At that rate, the descent to Ice Age temperatures could take less than 200 years.
I just have to pause. I know we have a smart audience, Jason. Folks, this video is in 1978. They are talking about alarmism about the temperature on the Earth dropping rapidly. They said they have measured these temperature drops over however many years. Contrast that to the previous video when they said because of the last 100 years of burning fossil fuels, the temperature has been going up. Maybe you can square this circle, Jason, but it seems to me you got to pick a lane at this point. But again, 4 years previously, warning about a global cooling.
And notice too how both videos make reference to a time period prior to the current, and both those are concurrent. So they're talking about the 50s, 60s, 70s, and they're making these assumptions about what was happening with the weather and the temperature and the conclusions scientists were reaching. And in 4 years, well, let's finish the video.
It is not only the lonely Arctic that is cooled. The whole northern hemisphere is growing steadily colder.
There is little doubt that someday the ice will return. At least 8 times in the past 1,000,000 years, it has advanced and retreated with clockwork regularity. If we are unprepared for the next advance, the result could be hunger and death on a scale unprecedented in all of history. What scientists are telling us now is that the threat of an ice age is not as remote as they once thought. during the lifetime of our grandchildren, Arctic cold and perpetual snow could turn most of the inhabitable portions of our planet into a polar desert.
Okay, I guess in 4 years, every single scientist changed their mind and new information was presented. 4 years, Jason, to look at a geological history of the Earth's temperatures seems pretty small to me, but maybe I don't know. I'm not a climate scientist, so I could be wrong about all this.
Yeah, I got to say my favorite part, too, is this was filmed in 1970, or this was played in 1978, and they were talking about our grandchildren's time. And Todd, we're living in our grandchildren's time now, right?
It would seem that way.
Like if you were growing up in 1978, consuming this content, and listening to Leonard Nimoy, doing your best Spock impersonation, like so your kids are now having kids. Yeah, now we're the grandkids. So we're living in the era that Leonard Nimoy was talking about, where the world is going to end because of global freezing. So, I mean, there's so much to unpack. So in 4 years, we're talking about the recorded human history and how the climate's changed and all this. In 4 years, we've gone from everybody's going to freeze and die to, but the seas are going to freeze up and all that. And then 4 years later, it turns out we were wrong. Everybody's going to die in a fiery death.
And I missed the part where they said, oops, we were wrong about that. They spoke with the same exact certainty. If you're listening to Nimoy in 78, you're like, oh, here we go. It's going to get cold. Better go buy a parka. And then 4 years later, they don't even try to hide the fact that they just told you that I think that went on for the entire 70s. We could pull up all the Time article covers where they talk about global cooling, global freezing, all this stuff. And 4 years later, they gloss right over it. How many times have we seen this, Jason, where they say one thing and then the very next day, just nope, this is how it is. We're at war with Eurasia now.
Right. And it's 180-degree shift. I mean, now
you can't get any more opposite than going from cold to hot.
Right. Freezing everybody out till you're all gonna die in a microwave. Like
I do love the part too.
And here's what's hysterical about it too, is once they got that global warming thing going, they have rode that pony for 40 some years now. And that second video we showed, that was from, 1982. And they've been showing ice caps melting. They've been showing all that. And Joseph expressed a great opinion here. You cannot change the climate. You cannot change the spin of the planet or the cycle of the planet, no matter how much money. Now, Joseph gets to have that opinion. There should be folks on platforms that get to have skepticism, shall you say, about what's maybe happening. Now, and let's go back to 1978. If we were convinced that the world was freezing and we were all going to die, Todd, what sort of actions do you think the government would take?
I mean, let me apply what I learned from the 1982 video. I learned that greenhouse gases trap carbon dioxide and heat on the planet, leading to higher temperatures. And so if I were a leading climate scientist in 1978, and I knew for certain that the climate was getting colder and colder and colder because I had all these years to show me a trend, maybe I would try to create this unnatural greenhouse on the planet in an attempt to trap heat and reverse the effects of a cooling. Does that seem out of bounds?
No. I mean, suddenly you'd be passing more legislation that we need less catalytic converters. We need less, we want to do things that are going to make the earth warmer.
Should we get more coal power plants?
Right. More coal power plants or whatever's causing. Now, once they shifted to the heat narrative, what do we need to do? Well, now we can't drive gas cars. We need to completely redo all of our infrastructure. We need to completely redo everything.
Somehow we have to get the temperature back down to the alarmism of 1978.
Yeah, I can't keep this straight, Todd. I don't know about you.
And, it makes me think if I were, I don't know enough about Elvis Presley, but it seems to me that he and so many others, they have a hard time falling asleep. So then you got to take some pharmaceutical to help you fall asleep at night. But then you have a hard time waking up because the effects are still in your body. So then you got to take another pharmaceutical to wake your body back up. And it seems like the more you manipulate, I'm not going to say Mother Nature for your own body, but just the basic physiology of your body and try to regulate that unnaturally, it gets harder and harder, and you just basically have to double down on the next step to fall asleep, wake up, stay cognitive. With the climate, if we go from cooling and try to warm it up, and then we try to reverse the warming up and try to cool it down, it seems to me that down the road, it's going to get out of hand really fast.
It's kind of like when you say out of hand, it would almost be like there could be a Middle Eastern country that's flooding and they have to put SUVs in rafts. It's a thing,
You're always behind the plane flying it. Michael makes a comment, weather modification is a real thing. Well, and they did just admit it. Cloud seeding is a real thing. At Climate Viewer, I don't know if that's on Twitter, has compiled a massive website with the receipts. Haven't been able to fact check them myself. I believe you, Michael. That might be worth checking out here.
Yeah, and I have to say, kind of the point of this is, other than people didn't know Dubai was flooded, was, as a civilization, as a society, we should be able to have conversations around, should we, is this really a problem? How do we go, who's going to answer the question? How do we go from 78 to the prevailing scientific opinion was we were going to freeze to death to 1982, where we're all going to die, where we're all going to get burned to death?
Thanks, Michael.
And what's the balance between those? And is it possible, just possible, that maybe the scientific studies or the conclusion these scientists have drawn might be incorrect? And if you bring that up, especially to a lefty, they're going to say, you are a science denier. Raise your hand if you've been at dinner with your lefty friends or family and yeah, maybe the science thing isn't 100% right. And they're like, you're a science denier. Why do you do that? Todd, have you ever had that happen?
I was called a science denier in the last couple of years, Jason, quite frequently by family members and friends. King Steve says, follow the money, and that's where the research goes. I think what King Steve is saying is that a lot of the science is determined not by the scientific method, but maybe about the funding sources too.
It's ironic, and King Steve made an excellent point. If you ever want to dig into studies and go down a rabbit hole, you look to see who's paying for the funding. So shifting to big pharma, if you look and see who's funding these tests for whatever medication, invariably it always goes back to people with a financial interest in it. These climate study changes, these are largely funded by people who benefit from an alarmist narrative. Because if everybody just said, the weather changes over time, who's going to keep spending millions and billions of dollars on this technology and this research? The people who benefit from it are the ones who get to scream about what's going on with it. It's truly remarkable.
Absolutely.
Stuff.
And you made a comment here, RFK Jr. running for president, and we are Trump voters here. I will not be voting for RFK. There was a time when I was kind of hopeful Trump might pick him for vice president. I think that time has passed. I'm much more of a Vivek guy nowadays. But when it comes to the FDA, I have a little more concrete proof that, and he talks about regulatory capture a lot, where pharmaceutical companies basically give money to the FDA for their budget, and then that agency is supposed to provide oversight to the very industry that is funding it. And all you have to do is ask yourself, does this seem like a problem?
Right. Well, and it's funny you say that too. So my wife and I were out to dinner with a friend of ours that worked in the medical industry, and we were talking about the tranny stuff. And I said, what's really remarkable is that the people that diagnose somebody as gender dysphoric, saying you need hormones and surgeries and all that, are the very same people who financially profit for the rest of their life from that diagnosis. So if you are a counselor, you're getting kickback from big pharma, and it might not be direct money. They just show up, give you guys stuff. Here's coffee, here's lunch, here's whatever. But if you throw a young kid on puberty blockers, they're going to be taking those for the rest of their life. Lifetime customer. And you, as the person with the financial stake in making that determination, are also the person who gets to make the determination. It's great. It's almost like when you go to the mechanic and just say, just tell me everything I need to get done to my car. Of course, many mechanics are going to say you need everything.
Yeah, and I do just want to go back to one more point here, Jason, from the Spock video. Lots of good stuff in here. And I wish I knew for certain. I was not born at the time. Sounds like you were a little too young. But if someone was alive between 1978 and 1982 and you're watching right now, do you recall when that narrative shifted exactly? And Jason, you and I could probably Google headlines and try to figure out exactly, but I would guess there was just a single day where it went from I woke up on Monday and it was global cooling, and I went to bed Monday night, and when I checked the news the next day, it was global warming. I kind of think it was that fast, and apparently nobody noticed. But Spock in the video talked about how it's clockwork that the Earth would enter cycles of cooling and warming and ice age. And then he was worried that that cycle was approaching our grandkids' time. But very interesting when you listen to 1978, when they just acknowledged that the Earth has climate cycles, which, I mean, I don't, yeah, Facebook can't say anything about that. That is true. But then nowadays, no, not cycles. It's all man-made. It's all this and that, your intervention. So because you were the problem, now we're going to intervene. And again, here we are with that huge cycle again of just trying to solve a problem we created, which creates new problems that we have to try to solve. And it just goes on and on forever. And someone will always get wealthy with new interventions.
Right. You know, Todd, and I don't know if you intended to do that, but you gave us a great segue. It's almost like we're professional podcasters.
No, it's like
because as we talk about the news, the next topic we're going to dive into is the border and immigrants. And we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into this. Some of this stuff, once again, you won't see on your daily news, but we're going to kind of frame it up. So using the example Todd talked about between 1978 and 1982, it went from just one night you went to bed and the world's going to freeze, and the next day you woke up and we were going to die in a fiery inferno. And it just changed overnight. Folks, if you don't think that really happens, go talk to your lefty friend who watches MSNBC, because up until about 90 days ago, the border was secure. Why are you a conspiracy theorist? What do you keep talking about? It's the most secure border ever. Todd and I on some, we write articles about it. John Pierre, KJP, she's been up there on press conferences for months saying, oh, the border's secure. I don't know what you're talking about. You're a crazy conspiracy theorist. And then overnight, you went to bed one night and the border was secure if you're a lefty. The next day you woke up and the border was a problem and it was Republicans' fault. And
Donald Trump's fault, who has not been in office in 3 years.
Right. Yeah. And then you as a critical thinker are going to say, well, day one, we've even played the video where Joe Biden and KJP were celebrating 91 executive orders that were passed and that Joe Biden undid President Trump's executive orders, but then they're saying they can't do anything about it. And so they were campaigning how they did away with Donald Trump's racist border rhetoric for 3 years. And then one day you woke up and said, nope, Joe Biden can't do anything about it without passing this law. And by the way, this law they keep talking about, we did a whole episode on it. It's one of the worst laws ever. It's going to essentially allow millions of illegals in that we just can't afford. And Todd, do you remember that night when you just woke up and all of a sudden it turns out the border is open and it's Republicans' fault?
I can't pinpoint a date, but I absolutely remember when not a problem, Joe Biden's doing great, Mayorkas is doing great, to suddenly it is Trump's fault and it is Republicans' fault that they didn't pass this outrageous bipartisan bill. And you talk about election fodder for the sheep. They believe, the Democrat spinsters, maybe not KJP and Biden, they know better, but all the Democrat voters actually believe that it is now Republicans' fault. We had a chance to secure the border that was already secure. They do not connect the dots that, oh no, it was fine yesterday, and today it's Trump's and Republicans' fault. They do not see that problem whatsoever. It is pretty insane what they continue to do. Yeah, so we talk about in real-time narrative shift, climate, cold, hot, immigration, secure, not secure. I mean, it just goes on and on. One day you just wake up and it's brand new, and unthinkingly people just follow it.
And that's what's remarkable. So if you think about, like, if you had Thanksgiving with your lefty, relatives, aunts, uncles, if you're still invited, and you're like, this border's out of control, they're like, why you keep saying that? You're a racist. And now you got together with them at Easter and they're like, I can't believe Republicans left the border open. And it's just the most, you look at them as just with a little bit of critical thinking and like, are you folks crazy?
Yeah, Michael makes a great point. Thanks for watching today, Michael, and sharing some resources here. But trying to reason with those from the center left is a non-starter. Do not waste your time. Honestly, it feels that way. I kind of get some kicks by just entering debates. I know it will never end well, but I think I just enjoy the process sometimes. But you're absolutely right, Michael. You will never change their minds. They are too far gone with the brainwashing and propaganda. I think IQ probably plays a role. All these factors make it impossible to get these people to change their minds.
Yeah, but honestly, that's why we do programs like this, and that's why we encourage you to share it with your friends and relatives. I mean, I'm thinking if I'm a climate crazy who thinks the world's going to end, and I see, wait a second, you mean in 4 years we went from we're all going to freeze to death to we're all going to cook in the oven? Like, that would at least make me make questions. And that's how we take this country back, folks. Like, it's not right versus left. It's not Republicans versus Democrat. It is the brainwashed versus the not brainwashed. And they're trying to get normal, everyday, average citizens to fight each other so that the powerful people can scare the sheep and then continue to, like, think about your Democrat friends who were like anti-government their entire life. And now they're coming after you going like, oh, you need to get your shot, or you need to, why don't you listen to the government? It's the craziest thing ever. For years, their brain was like, oh, the government's corrupt. Now they see corrupt prosecutions of President Trump and they're like, oh, he's a criminal. It's just truly remarkable.
Yeah.
But back to the immigration.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I know we have so many tangents to go on here. I was just going to say, Jason, to Michael's comment, you know exactly what your Biden voting family member is going to say. You know every single position they hold. And you knew it back in November when they believed the border was secure. You know it now when the border is not secure and it's Trump's fault. All you have to do is look at the headlines on MSNBC that day, and you just say, that is their belief. They have zero thoughts of their own at this point. I don't think they have any more free will. They are just automatons programmed by the machine. Whatever is told to them that day, that is their firm belief, and they will die on that hill to defend the belief. And if it changes the next day, they'll die on that same hill too.
Right. Now, as we shift to border two, I'm going to get a little bit in the weeds here, folks, so bear with me. Some of this is for the fact checker, some of it isn't. So to explain what's happening at the border, people from all over the world are being invited to America to become a refugee. And refugees are written into American law. It's actually U.S. Code 115B, U.S. Code 1101. It defines the procedure. So to read from the statute, in brief, this means that, basic grounds for asylum or refugee status. Being afraid to return to your home country is not enough by itself. To establish eligibility for asylum or refugee status under U.S. law, U.S. 1158, you must prove that you meet the definition of a refugee. In brief, this means that showing you are either the victim of past persecution or you have a well-founded fear of future persecution. In the case of past persecution, you must prove it. The persecution must be based on one of 5 grounds: your race, your religion, your nationality, your political opinion, membership in a particular social group. So just to summarize, the law says if you're an asylum, you need to be in a country where either race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership of a particular social group means you're being persecuted. Now, persecution isn't specifically defined. So I'm reading from what a lawyer says about it here. Persecution is defined generally as the infliction of suffering or harm or serious threat to your life or freedom. Harassment alone isn't enough, but things like death threats, torture, imprisonment, constant surveillance, pressure to join a group or engaging in illegal activity, interference with your privacy, family, home, correspondence, or discrimination in matters like housing, education, passport issuance. The fact that you are suffering economically is not by itself considered a reason for granting a refugee or asylee status, nor is it enough if somebody has a grudge against you or has committed crimes against you for random or personal reasons. So the U.S. has a law that says you're able to come to America. I mean, these are some pretty bad things, right? Like if right now, if you're a Christian in South Africa, you probably meet this qualification. There's some countries, actually, if you're a Christian in Afghanistan, you probably meet this qualification. Heck, if you're a Donald Trump voter in America, you almost meet this.
I was just going to say political
right
persecution. Donald Trump should apply for asylum status for being politically persecuted under this law.
Right. So understand where the basis of all these immigrants are. The people they're letting in, that you can't call them illegals, you can't call them immigrants, even though it's still in the code. These are all people who were suffering severe, like they were being killed in their home country. And I mean, truly some horrible things. I think we can all say if there's people that are actually going through that, I'm not necessarily opposed to them coming to America. Let's take them in, right? But what's happening is we're getting a bunch of economic migrants. You have a bunch of NGOs, non-government organizations. You have the word coming out from the administration that says, excuse me, things are rough in your country, come to America. Now, this isn't if you're being persecuted, if you're being killed, if you're being hunted. This is things are rough in your country. Your economy's not good. I mean, these are the recruiting tools. Donald Trump had executive orders in place, like first country. So meaning if you were on the other side of Mexico and you were coming to America, once you hit Mexico, that's why you are no longer, for fear of your life, that's where you apply for asylum for. Illegal immigrants coming from China, you escape China, you go into another safe country where you're not being persecuted. That would be where you would require, that's where you'd apply for refugee status. So understand these are people that are fearful for their life, right, Todd?
That sounds about right. And Jason, you and I were talking before the show about this, where sometimes it seems a little vague in the law. Folks, you best believe it is vague on purpose, because then no one can ever say for certain, like, yes, you are, no, you are not an asylum seeker. And so this is that little loophole that they write, see, it's codified, we're making sure that we vet everybody. No, you didn't, because you wrote a very vague, open-ended law that is open to interpretation. And so 8 million people under the Biden administration apparently qualify under these 5 categories now.
Think of that. If 8 million people in the world are being killed in their home country, like, we've got to, like, this is crazy, Todd.
And those are just the ones that could make it here so far. I keep seeing stories about the next wave of caravans, and goodness knows there's plenty of more people around the world that if these 8 million are getting persecuted, I'm sure there are plenty more right behind them coming.
Now, the good news is, if you have all these refugees who are from another country who are being killed, they're being hunted in the streets, they're going through these severe degrees of persecution that we described in the law, these people are going to show up, and these are going to be your most appreciative Americans, right, Todd? They're going to say, thank you for opening your country to us. We so appreciate it, right?
Yeah, you would think they would be quite grateful for the opportunity to live. I think that's the baseline here. They escaped the threat of being killed in their home country. So they come here. Thank you, America, for taking me in. I am super grateful for that. That doesn't seem to be the reaction by a lot of communities. And to be clear, folks, there are plenty of immigrants in America that love this country more than most Americans, because they recognize, and I think Cuban Americans down in Florida exemplify this, they left communist Cuba and they fully appreciate what America has to offer for them. And side note, Jason, is it weird that if you're Cuban and you don't make it to touch ground in Florida, you get sent back to Cuba? It seems to be the only community, because they have more conservative values and maybe political leanings, that, oh, by the way, only you guys can't come here automatically. But
yeah, it's funny. It's like people fleeing communist regimes, the government doesn't want them here. Weird. Huh. But anyway, so this week, going back to news you didn't see, there were some meetings, I believe these ones were in New York, where the refugees who came here, and in your mind, you're thinking this is somebody who's being killed in their home country. And they're going to be super grateful. They're asylum seekers. Todd, should we show them what these meetings look like?
And I will just say they are not from the neighboring country of Mexico, to Jason's point earlier about finding the nearest safe country.
But at the shelter, the food, my kids cannot eat the food at the shelter.
Todd's Wi-Fi went down.
And on Ramadan time, we couldn't eat, because when you come back for the break, the food is no good at all.
ko ɓe jonata men kon kadi 2 mois a yalta o 2 mois ɗo timma yalta tawa ko ya ƴettu kadi paykoy koye fof ƴetta bagage ji ma yaha kadi winditoyoɗa ɓe naɓira ma kadi nokkugo hara paykoy koye no jangirde nokkugo ɗum noon fof no wondani men e sattede.
And they give us 2 months to stay at the shelter, and then you have to go out again with your luggages and the kids and find another place. It's very difficult.
Haray ɗum ɗon vraiment hino satti min paykugan kadi janunkun mo mari 18-19 entre ɗon o wawali heɓude ha joni komo janga.
And also I have a kids that is like 18 to 19.
You're gonna have to carry the video, Todd. Mine wasn't playing.
Okay. Well, folks, I'm going to stop the video there here. In short, you have 3 minutes of them complaining about 2 things. The food, their kids, they're spoiled, ungrateful kids who apparently are not starving anymore because they are just refusing to eat that god-awful food that apparently the taxpayers provided them and wasn't good enough. And then they said after 2 months of living in a free hotel, they were asked to leave. They had to, Jason, they had to pack their suitcases. That's such a hardship that they're experiencing now in the country.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Now the video popped up for me. Yeah. So here's a meeting, New York city government. These folks are seeing the food. Not like you were theoretically, you were starving and being hunted for your life. And you have the audacity to go into a government meeting and saying, we demand better food. Why do you keep making us move? They're getting put up in 5-star hotels. Todd, truly remarkable stuff.
Oh, we've got more, Jason. This is going to be from our buddy Will, who writes for us at the American Tribune. There is another clip from the same meeting. Let's take a look.
There are unique dialects that are also coming that I've never heard of, that I'm learning now about. People from Madagascar are coming. You have people, Burundi are coming. People from countries that are not common to us. So language access has been truly, truly a challenge, especially if you don't understand. Pular from Guinea and Pular in Mauritania, Pular in Senegal is very different.
So thank you, because we have to push for language access, because I have seen it, people telling me even to stay in the shelter, to wherever in the hurg they cannot stay, because when they ask them to reapply, they're not getting it. And so thank you for continuing the work.
I do want to add on one thing. There is a significant amount of people who are illiterate, so written does not work. We have been sending voice clips to the migrants, explaining to them what their rights are and to understand what's going on. So it's not just written, we need vocals.
Thank you.
May I intervene for that? Because I actually taught literacy class in Brooklyn, in the library of Bushwick. And we have, you know, in Africa, unfortunately for us, learning how to read and write is a privilege. And a lot of our brothers and sisters do not know how to read and write. So they only speak their, I would say, native language. Like I said, I'm from the Congo, so I was speaking only in Congolese, one of the many Congolese languages that I speak with my fellow brother and sister to help them out. So
all right, I think Robert summarizes this the best here, Jason. I had to pause the video, but entitled Arrogant and Demanding Migrants. I'm going to read the tweet here. It says, in the Congo alone, we didn't get to this clip, you have more than 500 languages. And then this person goes on to say, but New York City refuses to accommodate them. In her own admission at the start of this clip, you heard her say it is challenging because there are lots of dialects that very few people speak. And now at the same time, even though she acknowledged that that might be a challenge, New York City apparently has to do better and accommodate every single last language spoken. They have to accommodate everyone that is illiterate and doesn't know how to read and write. Somehow that is your fault as the American city providing housing, food, money in your bank account, a cell phone. You get all of this, but it is not good enough for these folks.
Well, and I gotta hang on one word she said, Todd, and Robert mentioned it. Migrant. Folks, we started reading the statute, and these folks aren't supposed to be migrants. These folks are supposed to be refugees who are being persecuted for their race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership of a social group. And remember, persecution is defined as the infliction of suffering or harm, serious threat to your life or freedom. Harassment alone isn't enough. Folks, they're telling you right to your face that they're migrants. They felt that we made a promise to them for what goods and services we would provide. And anybody in this administration that's telling you the border's secure or whatnot, we are not allowing migrants in. And people that do want to migrate for a better quality of life in America, they apply. They are supposed to learn English before they get here. They're supposed to say how they're going to participate in making America better. They are not supposed to come in and say, hey, you invited us here, give us all this free stuff. It's just frustrating as heck, Todd.
Beyond belief. And it makes me we're from Minnesota. I used to work in St. Cloud, and if you're familiar with Minnesota geography, we have imported, I don't even know the exact number, but plenty of Somali folks, first, second, third generation now coming over here. And when you talk about fleeing persecution, this lady said there are over 500 dialects from Congo alone, and apparently they're all in New York City now, and they all need to be accommodated. When I was in St. Cloud and we imported Somali communities, they self-selected and said, I'm only going to live in this part of the city if they're my tribe, and we would have schools full of children from just that specific tribe in Somalia. And a couple miles away, there would be another tribe of Somalia that resettled. It's not as if it is just a homogenous group and they're all, oh, we have Somalis in St. Cloud. It's a little bit more specific than that. They don't like each other. They go to separate schools. They live in separate neighborhoods up in that area. In New York City with 500 dialects, I would guess they don't all like each other for the same reason. They have the tribal instincts. They say, these are my people. These are not your people. And so if you are fleeing persecution and we import every single tribe and group, does it not stand to reason that you are simply importing the same people who might have persecuted the other group that is now here? And so what persecution are you even getting away from at this point?
You know, and you touched on a key point too with these immigrant groups that we bring in. When legal immigrants, who we love, we think legal immigrants are some of the best Americans.
The communists, import the legal immigrants. I'm okay.
Yeah. The blue-haired crazy cat lady in her 20th abortion, she can go to the Congo.
If you want 500 languages from the Congo, you go live in the Congo and learn every last one of them. That sounds great.
Yeah, it's great. But when you come to America, you're supposed to say, I'm going to give up all these issues from the previous country. And we've seen it in New York. There were different ethnic groups, you know, the Germans or Italians or whatnot, and they tend to clump together a little bit and they tend to fight with each other. But long-term, their goal was to assimilate and be an American. And hey, I want to bleed the red, white, and blue. I love this country, the melting pot, all these things. And we've seen, because we've had Somali immigrants in Minnesota for decades now, we have seen where they aren't necessarily looking to branch out and be a broader part of the conversation of America or leave their communities or adapt to our way of life. I'm guessing these folks in the Congo won't either, Todd.
That would be my guess. And again, we have a lot of local Minnesota stories that I think apply nationwide. Certainly in New York City, I'm guessing they have their own little boroughs carved out at this point. But we've seen stories in Lakeville, Minnesota, Lino Lakes, Minnesota, where Somalis with millions of dollars. And if you want to look into I think, what was it called? Feed the Youth program or whatever. They had a lot of COVID monies tossed around. I am not saying that's where the money is coming from. I'm simply saying that was a thing. And now we have Somalis with millions of dollars buying up acres and acres of land to create Somali-only communities, housing, grocery stores, places to hang out. They will have their own little enclaves in these suburbs of the Twin Cities. I don't know to what extent that is happening in New York City. But if you're talking about assimilation, Jason, and that should be the goal of every immigrant, that doesn't mean you forget who you are. It doesn't mean ignore all your customs. I am fine with people speaking different languages in the household. I think that's great. But you still have to identify as an American and share America's values. And from what I'm seeing lately with immigrants, that is not the case. They're coming here for the goodies. They're going to take what they can, and they're not going to give anything back.
Well, and it's kind of like this lady. You don't see these folks out there saying, we really want to contribute to American society. We really want to be part of this. we need you to learn the 500 Congo languages so that we can learn English. That's our goals. We want to learn English. No. You want us to be able to speak to you in Congo to explain how to take advantage of our system and get more free stuff.
And understand, as she said, your rights as a migrant.
Right. I'm sorry, folks. You're not an American citizen. You really don't have many rights.
Should we do one more video? I think if we're talking about ingratitude, this one...
yeah, we got to play this last one. We're running a few minutes over, folks, but this is...
All right, I got to make sure we don't replay the same video here. Here we go. All right, so what you are watching is a massive illegal immigrant I won't say illegal. Maybe some are here legally, but a massive immigrant protest outside of New York City Hall. And I don't know if that was the same place that they're having that hearing just now. Jason, I am always shocked, and people say, well, there's second shift, there's third shift, there's stay-at-home, whatever. It is the middle of the day. Instead of at a job providing for their families or for themselves, they apparently have all the leisure time in the world to just stand outside City Hall and demand more freebies from the government. Give me a translator, give me better food, give me a longer stay in a hotel. Arrogance, ingratitude, entitlement doesn't even describe this mentality.
Well, and I got to say, sometimes the left does stuff and it ends up biting them in the tail. And for those who don't know, it's hard to miss. Like every news cycle's covered by Donald Trump's hush money case. And we've covered it in the past, but that started this week with jury selection. The whole thing's a sham. But what's an unintended consequence is the Donald Trump trial has dragged a bunch of independent journalists into New York City. And Laura Loomer was one. Love Laura Loomer. Love following her. I don't know if this was her video, but she was down there sharing a lot of videos. So as all these independent journalists are in New York City, they're wandering around. They're seeing what's going on in the city. And the local news and the media, mainstream media, completely ignores this. But evidently, these protests happen a lot in New York City. One would think that if you had hundreds of, now I'll just say too, a lot of those look like military age males, just going out on a limb. But if you've got hundreds of people at New York City Hall protesting, they want more stuff. They're mad because their 4 months in a 5-star hotel are up and you're asking them to move to a migrant camp now. You would think that would be mainstream media news coverage, but no. And the only reason we're seeing this is because the Democrats are going after Trump in the Stormy Daniels case. And this has brought an influx of independent journalists into New York City. So I got to say, I think the left may regret bringing all these journalists into New York City. What do you think, Todd?
Absolutely, because now we're covering New York City, but Jason, we didn't even get to the story in Denver where the mayor, that woke, clueless mayor of Denver, cut police funding and firefighting funding in order to pay more money out to illegal immigrant services, basically. Millions of dollars getting diverted to house, feed, provide bennies to the swarm of immigrants that have come into that city. Dare I say, flooded the city based on the title of our episode.
Right. With that, folks. So flooding in Dubai, flood of migrants in our major cities. They aren't refugees. They're people looking for free stuff. And they demand that you give them free stuff. It's truly remarkable times. But like Todd and I always say, we ask that you share this content, especially with people you might not politically agree with, because I guarantee that if you're a consumer of CNN, MSNBC, shoot, maybe even Fox, you didn't know about these protests. You don't know about these demands these people are putting up in New York. You probably didn't know Dubai's flooded. And these should all be front page news stories. But instead, if you watch MSNBC, all you're going to have is round-the-clock coverage of the Trump trial and what juror number 6 said. And we'll cover that as we get into the trial. The trial's horrible. It's a travesty of justice. But they're distracting us from all this real news happening. And that's why Todd and I do what we do.
Absolutely. And I'm going to end our show with paraphrasing Thomas Sowell. You are greedy for wanting to keep your own money to provide for you, but they are not greedy for demanding the money that you have. Just keep that in mind. That is the narrative. You are selfish and greedy and racist if you want to keep what's yours and keep this country. They are not greedy and selfish for demanding everything that we have to offer and giving nothing back.
We live in truly remarkable times. But folks, we're going to be on this ride with you. We appreciate you tuning in. Give us a like, follow, share. You can find us both on Twitter, and you can follow our digital properties at The American Tribune. TheAmericanTribune.com. That's where we cover the news. The little bit spicier topics we cover on www.theamericantribune.news. Will did a great breakdown this week. California, they are passing some crazy laws. You can find it on www.theamericantribune.news. Just a preview. They passed a law where it's legal for a 14-year-old to sleep with. Was it a 24-year-old, Todd?
We can't even say the language that this article gets into. California is completely gone at this point, but go to theamericantribune.news to check it out for yourself. But we don't want to get nuked by Facebook right now, so we can't even say what that word is. But you can use your imagination. But on that note, folks, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for the comments. Have a great weekend.